What's going on, everyone? Today we're going to talk about sharpening professionally as a business, for income, whatever you want to call it. And we're going to focus specifically on whetstone sharpening. Before we hop into that, just want to give a big thank you out to everyone who's been watching. We monetized our YouTube channel in the past day or two. We have a membership option and the supers option turned on. Not 100% sure how those actually work, but I'll try to throw a link in the description. We're going to try to focus on bringing in more stones to do reviews on and whatnot. So if you can support the channel, greatly appreciated. All right, so sharpening for income. Obviously, a belt sander or a Tormek, something like that is going to be faster, and that will give you the opportunity for to make more money. But whetstone sharpening is still a good option. I did it for a couple years. You can definitely make money doing it. There are some kind of tricks and hacks to make it the most efficient as it could be. There are people out there who don't want their knives sharpened, with a belt. It's just their preference. A whetstone will definitely put less heat into the knife. So, pocket knife wise, or even high-end chef's knives, they might want them done on a stone. So as far as how much to charge, I'm not going to go into specifics of how much you should charge. I will kind of break down what I used to charge, but that's going to vary depending on your location. And it's also been a couple years since I've done it. So first, let's talk about what you really need. And what you're going to need is obviously some whetstones and a way to flatten and maintain your whetstones. If you're getting into the volume of 10, 20, 30 knives a day, you're going to very quickly wear your whetstones. You're going to need to flatten them and resurface them. So whether you choose to do that with a diamond plate or silicon carbide grit, basically whatever option you pick, but you're just going to need to have that set up. I find that silicon carbide grit on a big piece of glass is the fastest way to do it, so you got to factor that time in as well. As far as stones go, you're going to want to find your kind of bread and butter stone. This is a Shapton Glass 500. I really like this stone, and that will take care of the vast majority of decent chef's knives that come in. They're going to come in, they're not going to be damaged, they're not going to be super dull, they're just in for their touch-up sharpening. Most people will be extremely happy with the finish left by a stone like this. You can go a little bit coarser, 320, 500. Majority of line cooks and chefs are not going to notice, care, or want a polished edge. So this is a good option for that. Then you're definitely going to need a super coarse stone. An Atoma 140, something in the 1 to 200 grit range. You're going to get a lot of home knives in that are absolutely hammered, chipped up, broken edges. You'll get stuff that's so unbelievably dull that you're going to need that super coarse stone. And then you're going to need, you will get that request, especially if you advertise it, of a super refined edge. You're going to want probably something of at least 3,000 grit if you're going to offer that service, maybe even a little bit more. For pocket knives, you know, if you're going to go beyond just a sharpen with a single stone, a guided system's probably going to be your best bet. Even though they are overall a little bit slower, if you have clients looking for that perfect mirror edge, a guided system's going to get you there more consistently. All right, so let's talk about pricing now. I don't really know the length of this blade. Let's call it 8 inches. So the way I structured my pricing is by the inch. And not just by the inch, but by the inch by the stone. So I'm going to throw the number of $1 per inch out there. That might not be the correct number for you, but that's what we're going to say, is $1 an inch. So if this knife comes in destroyed, but is a fairly decent knife, and needs to see 2 stones, you would get $1 per inch per stone would be $16. So that'd be a $16 sharpening job on this knife. Now, something like this may or may not be worth it. It's a $30 knife, but if it was a $100 knife, then it may be. So you have to discuss that with your customer. And then you can let them know future sharpenings, if they take care of it, would only be $8 because you don't have to go back to that first stone. I also would do a minimum. So if someone brings you a 3-inch knife that needs to see 2 stones, you can say it's $1 an inch per stone, but there's a $10 minimum. So that you're not just doing $3 or $6 worth of work for one customer, and that will encourage them to bring you a couple of knives. So then maybe you have 12 inches of blade to sharpen over 2 stones and $24, and the setup and breakdown and cleaning your stones becomes worth your time. And I followed that kind of structure with pocket knives as well. It worked just the same. And you would get a 3 or 4 inch pocket knife in, but they would want a mirror polish, and it would need to see 4 stones. So you're talking 3 inches, $3 per stone that you're sharpening on. And it's a $12 sharpening job, and it worked out pretty well. Now, like I said, you may need to charge $1.50 an inch, or your area only will support 75 cents an inch. That's something you really need to figure out. There would always be the occasion of someone would drop off an entire butcher block set and want everything sharpened, and you can discount that as needed. Do that however you want, whether it's as soon as you hit a certain number of sharpening inches, the price drops, or a bulk bundle price. So that's kind of how I did that. I think that covers most of the relevant information. Like I said, the most important part is really going to be that you need the correct stones. You do need that super coarse stone to make it efficient. If you're spending more than a minute or 2 on a stone with a knife, that's really too long for it to be sustainable. You don't want to end up in a situation where you're working all day to make $30. If you're not making that a substantial amount of money doing it, there's no real point in doing it. As a profession, as a hobby, or a little bit of a side hustle, that's up to you. But if you're going to try to do it full time, you need to be able to make enough money to make it worth it, to cover for advertising and damage that happens. There's always the situation where you damage somebody's knife and it needs to be replaced, or something like that. You drop a knife. Any weird situation can come up. So that's kind of, you got to make sure it's an actual income that can cover the cost of doing it. And that's so that's about it. Yeah, like I said, check out the channel features we added, the supers. as well as the memberships, and I really, really appreciate you watching. Like and subscribe, and we're going to have some more stone content coming out real soon. I'm going to try to get my hands on a Shapton Rockstar 500 to compare to this guy. So thanks for watching. Appreciate you. Catch you on the next one.